coming? Okay. All right, hold on a second. We'll get started here in a minute. Tom, will you lead us in the pledge when it's
sure.
time? Because we'll have to do that again. Yeah.
Moving on. It's, I could go into it more, but it's very difficult to make a decision like that.
Yeah.
She's bringing a
I think
tray of
it's one of the hardest
stuff.
decisions you could possibly make as a
Look at him wait on us all.
to know somehow that you're right when you make that decision.
I think it's possible. Just makes me feel
But I mean, you have to do it, but
That's fine.
And how you say that.
be certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I think that's impossible.
But I can't do it.
Bothered me was,
I can't do anything.
All work together.
It didn't hold his response against
yeah, that's where my intuition
That's funny,
kicked in.
Carolyn.
Okay, hold on.
Matching t-shirts.
There's other interesting things in the man's background.
I
Yeah,
like to hear it.
Welcome to the party, Chris.
see.
How are you?
We'll wait and see.
Oh, I don't see you in a brace or a cast or...
I'm out of the sling, I'm out of both casts, we're doing well, you know?
Yeah,
The answers could be the same, but you think differently going more information.
yeah,
That's where it makes the switch. That's how far you go.
yeah.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. Is he ready in there? Yep,
Yes.
he's ready in there. Okay. We will call to order the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners meeting for Wednesday, August 2nd, 2017. And we will rise for the pledge led by Commissioner Mayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Bonnie.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor,
Here.
Lathrop,
Yep,
Johnson,
Here.
Gorfulet. Here. Klaus,
Here.
Crawford.
Here. We have approval of the minutes. We have some corrected minutes on our desk for July 26, 2017. And the only change was a correction to the resolution numbers. Does anybody have any?
Madam Chairman, I would move to approve the corrected minutes as provided.
Or.
Moved by Commissioner Wheelock, supported by Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? That brings us to first public comment. Bonnie, would you read the rules, please?
Any person shall be permitted to address the meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
With that, is there anyone here for public comment this time? There will be other opportunities. Okay, we will move on to approval of the agenda. I do have 2 changes. One is to add, under new business, appointment to the Building Authority. And second one would be to remove the Veterans Affairs Committee update, which is new business A. It's my understanding that Civil Council and Administration are currently working on that and would like some more time before that's discussed at the board level. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the amended agenda?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Wheelock, supported by Commissioner Klaus. Any further discussion? So, Cheryl?
Just to be clear, the Veterans Affairs issue, are we to assume then that nothing is going to be happening until we have a presentation on this? No actions will be taken?
No, go ahead, Chris.
No actions by this board will be taken.
No actions will be taken by the administration?
No,
Just a meeting with the board chair and council and myself.
Thank you. Okay. And so we'll have, Building Authority appointment will be new business A, and the county administrator search will be new business B. That will be the last thing. Okay? Any?
Move to accept as amended?
I think we already had a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, have an agenda. Consent calendar. Bonnie, please.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, resolution regarding Great Lakes Initiative funding from Bay County. Number 2, 2016 audited financial statement. Approvals. Number 1, election equipment grant. Number 2, Healthy Future Services Agreement Amendment Number 12 renewal.
So does anybody from the public have anything they want removed from the consent calendar and discussed? Any members of the board?
Well, the A2 will probably come up in 7A.
What, yeah. I think that was a receive and file,
Okay.
and we will be talking about that. Anybody else have anything to remove? Any administration?
Nope.
No? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Your turn.
I move that we approve the consent calendar as presented.
I second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Mayer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to special orders of business, the presentation of the 2016 audit. Go Jody.
Sure, I'll turn on the TVs here in a second. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and to everyone at home watching, to those attending in the audience for their interest in the financial health of Grand Traverse County. Gaybridge and Company performed the audit on our 2016 financial statements. Joe Verlin was the principal in charge on that audit and is here to present his findings and review of the audited financial statements. As you may recall, he had come to us when they were awarded the engagement for conducting the audit this year. So we found that they were a delight to work with. We're welcoming him here to present tonight. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my finance department staff. Each member of the team was just fantastic in ensuring that with this transition to Gaybridge and Company that we had everything completed, and I hope that they also found the finance staff a delight to work with, as I do.
Okay. Welcome.
Oh,
Good evening.
yes.
TVs.
I don't know how to work the remote at home either.
What?
There you go.
There's one.
How about that one? Do you have a better angle?
It's not working. Looks like part of it's on, isn't it?
That was the reflection from the other side.
What do we do? I'll keep trying.
Please be patient. We have technical issues. Oh, there it is.
It's operating.
Okay.
Will it automatically go up?
Sarah to the rescue,
We thought we had our best laid plans.
of course.
We just need some music while we're waiting for the IT difficulties.
I was hoping you wouldn't suggest
I will not
that.
sing, I will not sing.
I've heard that
trust me.
Bob sings karaoke
That will
sometimes.
kill the audience that is watching us at home. We don't have many people in here, so.
So much for the ID. That's the whole concept of friendly fire.
Yes.
It was working.
I know, before we started. What's working?
Is this why we need to upgrade our IT system?
Oh, wow.
Brother.
Maybe the TVs.
One issue we will be addressing.
They're just TVs, come on. Anybody have anything
We all have the
interesting?
materials, don't we? I mean,
I don't know if they might have different materials than what's in front of us.
We had just only a few charts.
Oh, okay. That are not in our book?
Correct.
Oh, okay,
That summarize that information, but
okay.
Next agenda.
Are they in our packet? No.
Sarah worked great under pressure, so she'll be fine.
Good thing she didn't leave yet, right?
What do you think about that, guys? We can move on to the next agenda item and come back?
Yes.
Do you want to do that?
that would make sense.
That makes sense to me. You guys continue to work on that, but we're going to have to make room at the podium for administration agreement with Chestnut Hills. Let's talk about that.
Well, that's an agreement with regarding an easement. There's a shared driveway easement, and there was no agreement between the county and Chestnut Hills, and this is an agreement that says that it will be maintained on the 50-50 basis, and nothing could be done without the agreement of the other party.
Okay?
Just clarifies it, and there was an agreement, now there will be, and we would be providing 50% of the keeping it up.
And which county property is that?
It's the entrance of the Public Services Building to the Chestnut Hills Condo Association. And Jackie Gwynn approached us a little bit over a month ago and asked to partner with, and we didn't have the agreement in place. And so Civil Council has reviewed it. It is subject to agreement on both parties, otherwise the agreement is terminated. So there's very little risk associated with it. And we'll be partnering on a couple of small projects yet this year, should you approve the agreement tonight.
And is the road commission in?
It's a private access,
Private road.
Oh.
so it's county-owned property, so the road commission is not involved.
Oh, okay.
And the cost?
This year, it's projected to be less than $1,000 is what has been
I
proposed.
think they want to seal the driveway.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, I'm trying to picture it. I think it's on the north side of the buildings, right?
Jackie, do you want to explain the entrance in the shared area?
Is it the north side? Yeah.
No better than they ask the woman north, south, east, or west, right or left.
Hey, no.
As I close my eyes, look at the water, it'll be the entrance off of Lafreniere, and it will be going east into the county building. You will pass their parking lot and then continue down the drive. Don't turn in their parking lot, and we are a small teardrop-shaped road. We've sealed our teardrop part 2 years ago. You notice that the upper part that we share is getting a lot of cracks. I brought pictures. You want to send them down one side, and may as well quickly send the other side too. There are some significant cracks there that will be taken care of first before the ceiling comes on. There is also, I call it a sinkhole, but it is about the size of a sewer cover. That this will be the second time that it needs repaired. Our association did not repair it before. We believe it was DPW, but that's one of the parts of the project that we're going to try to get to the bottom of that so that we don't have to do it twice. We took the division, the 50% will not involve our teardrop part. It's only the front part where we're asking for 50%, and I gave you the benefit of the doubt. The county building where the driveway goes in from the road to where you cut in to the county driveway is 32 feet wide. The back part for our teardrop before you get to where the road splits is only 23 feet. And you'll see in the pictures, there's a definite curve there where, across the road, where the original drive was put in, I believe by Terra Energy or Rock Oil, I forget which one owned that at that time. So we have not asked you to pay for 50% beyond the parking lot, even though you own further back, because we're the majority users of it. It seemed only fair that we not go back that far. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, no. Only question I might have is just something to check later. Make sure that the width of the entrance, because it's two ways, the width of that entrance off of Lafreniere is wide enough.
It does include the description, the apron out there at Lafreniere Road.
Visually, it just seems a little narrow to me. I don't know. For two-way traffic.
I'm not following you.
Yeah. Before you pull
We've
off of
included the
Lafreniere,
apron
down
in the
that-
50 for 50, and the apron comes down to 32 feet, and then when it gets past the county's driveway, it narrows to 23 feet. We've had it measured. I give you a diagram and send it around if you really want to see the split. And it's a very curvy road, so that made it a little more difficult to describe. But we did in the contract put the right-of-way legal term, but the road width changes, and we're discussing the road, not the whole right-of-way.
Any other questions or comments, or do we have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Gorfulet, supported by Commissioner Johnson to approve this agreement with Chestnut Hills. Any further discussion?
I have to say, it looks better than 8th Street right now, so
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that passes. Thank you.
All right, back to Jody.
All right, thank you so much for bearing with us through that technical difficulty. Special thanks to Sarah Lutz, our deputy clerk, for resolving it. The Auditor Joe Verlin will be going through first some highlights from the actual audit document, so those that are at home that have difficulty seeing what's up on the screen, or commissioners, if you have your hard copy in front of you, you'll be able to follow along with the page numbers as he references them.
Okay, welcome again.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to serve as your audit firm. It very much was a pleasure working with the staff. Everybody was very courteous, very prompt. They take certainly a great deal of pride and ownership over the work that they provided to us. Throughout the process, they provided us with trial balances and financial statements and all of the supporting schedules that we needed in order to verify revenues, expenditures, assets, and liabilities of the county. And one thing that I do want to point out before I get into the nuts and bolts of the actual audit report itself, the county, not only does it have a financial statement audit report, but in addition to that, it prepares a full-blown CAF, or comprehensive annual financial report, which includes an introductory section and a statistical section, and it's put together in such a way that it's easy for the residents and readers to navigate through those financial statements and get additional information above and beyond what is actually required within a financial statement audit report. And then the county submits it to the Government Finance Officers Association for the award for excellence in financial reporting. In the state of Michigan, there's roughly 75 municipalities that submit their financials, their comprehensive annual financial report to the GFOA. Out of roughly 4,000 local units of government, if you look at all the cities, villages, townships, counties, and school districts. So roughly 2% of local units of government take that extra step, and I think that it really goes to show how much pride the county takes in its financial reporting. You can find on page 9, the award. And it's dated December 31st, 2015. The county has submitted the December 31st, 2016 report for the award as well. That will be the 12th consecutive year that the county has received it. So again, just kudos to the administrative and finance staff, as well as all the other departments that participate in the extra work that goes into preparing a CAFR. So of the 225 pages, the most important page is the page that contains the opinion. And it means something to receive an unmodified or a clean opinion. It should always be the county's goal to receive that unmodified or clean opinion. And you can see that it was achieved on page 13, the third paragraph down. The unmodified opinion basically means that, in our opinion, as auditors, the financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial condition of the county as of December 31st, 2016. So basically, the information that was provided to us we were able to substantiate it. We did not have any proposed adjusting journal entries to provide to the county, which again just shows how high of quality the work was that was provided to us during the audit process. The next section of the audit report that I take readers through is management's discussion and analysis, and I take readers through it because I guess I would consider it to be the Cliff Note version of the entire audit report. It's basically about 12 pages that explain how all the financial statements articulate to each other, the different measurement focuses. It also has comparative financial information, so you can see revenues, expenses, assets and liabilities for each of the past 2 fiscal years, just to get a little bit of the trajectory or the historical context of what the numbers mean. And in addition to that, there's also some financial highlights. And I quickly want to walk through those financial highlights. You can find those on page 16. First bullet point on page 16 shows that the net pension liability was $64,262,282 as of December 31st, 2016. That is includes both the county as well as the pavilions. So those two aggregated together get us to the $64.2 million figure. That number is a $5,679,668 increase over December 31st, 2015. One schedule that I'm going to get to later on in the presentation is the footnote schedule that shows the ins and outs, in other words, what led to that $5.6 million increase in net pension liability during 2016. So there's more information to come on that. Second bullet point down, the total liabilities increased by $6,738,047, again, largely related to that increase in net pension liability. The third bullet point shows that the assets and deferred outflows within governmental activities exceeded the assets and deferred inflows as of December 31st by $532,513. Again, this is governmental activities only, exclusive of business type activities. Next bullet point down, you can see the total net position of the governmental activities decreased by $3,631,016. This is on the accrual basis of accounting, which is the same basis of accounting that a corporation would use to measure its financial performance. So in other words, if we were looking at corporate statements, we would consider that to be a net loss during the year within governmental activities of about $3.6 million. The next bullet point down shows a short-term focus of accounting, or now we're focusing on the funds. It's not quite cash basis of accounting, but I think to convert it into more understandable terms, when I say modified accrual, we're really talking about almost cash basis accounting. What is the total amount of resources that the county has available as of December 31st, 2016 to cover its immediate obligations? So when we take that, and that's the more traditional method for looking at the equity of a municipality. So the governmental funds had total ending fund balances of $21,909,370. That is an increase of $3,268,351. I would consider that to be cash in versus cash out created an increase in fund balance of $3.2 million. So when we look at the very short-term focus, the county had a nice increase in fund balance, but when we look at the long-term focus, and take into consideration the change in the net pension liability, which is a 23-plus year liability that the county is going to be funding, there was actually a decrease in that position. So it really depends what measurement focus we're taking a look at. Long-term, there was a decrease. Short-term, there was a healthy increase in fund balance. Continuing to navigate through that same bullet point, we can see that the unassigned fund balance was $6,074,735, or roughly 27.7% of all of the county's total fund balances for its governmental activities. Next bullet point down, looking just at the general fund, there was $7,469,735 of unassigned fund balance in the county's general fund as of December 31st, 2016. That number represents 21.4% of the annualized expenditures and transfers out. Just to give some idea of what the liquidity of the county was as of December 31st, 2016. Government Finance Officers Association recommends having 2 months' worth of reserves and unassigned fund balance within a general fund, which is roughly 17%. So the county is right about where it should be at the 21.4%. Not only does it meet the GFOA recommended best practice, but it also exceeds the county's fund balance policy of 15%. And then lastly, that last financial highlight shows that total long-term debt decreased by $2,137,559 during 2016. In other words, the county continues to meet all of its required debt service obligations and pay down roughly $2.1 million of principal on its long-term debt. Working through the rest of the management discussion and analysis, if you turn to page 20, we get a comparative look at the assets, liabilities, and net position of the county for each of the past 2 fiscal years. I want to focus on just 4 lines here, first being the net pension liability. So you have to look about 3/4 of the way down the statement of net position to find the net pension liability. It's in the non-current liabilities section. And you can see in total primary government, as of December 31st, 2016, the net pension liability was $64,262,282, up from $58,582,614. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board issued statement number 68, which is the new pension reporting standard. This is year 2 that the county has implemented or had to implement the new pension reporting standard. So this is relatively new. In addition to the net pension liability, we also have to look at the deferred outflows related to pensions, which are contributions subsequent to the measurement date. They did this to make things more simple. I don't know that they necessarily accomplished simplifying the financial statements, but you will also see a pension-related deferred outflow about 1/3 of the way down the page. And we really need to look at those two in conjunction with each other because they are very closely related. So not only did the net pension liability increase, the deferred outflows on pensions decreased, which is actually unfavorable, from $4,959,958 down to $3,663,502. So when we aggregate all of that together, there was a $6,976,124 non-cash expense that the county had to recognize in its financial statements during 2016 as a result of the continued implementation of the new pension reporting standard. Again, we'll get to a footnote disclosure that shows the makeup of that so we get a better idea of what's driving that number. But certainly it was significant, and that is the primary reason that the county is showing such a large decrease in unrestricted net position during 2016. In addition to that, if you look one row down underneath the net pension liability, we see the net OPEB liability. And the county, as of December 31st, 2015, was showing net OPEB liability of $3,593,356. That number increased to $4,620,723. That number represents the annual required contribution that the actuaries have looked at when they look at the census of all the eligible retirees who can participate on the OPEB plan. They come up with an annual number that they anticipate the expense to be compared to the actual payments that the county is making on those retiree premiums. The difference is picked up as a liability. We're going to see also an unfunded actuarial liability later on in this financial report that the county needs to be aware of, because as of December 31st, 2018, there's going to be a no OPEB reporting standard issued by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board that's going to require additional OPEB liability to be reported on the statement of net position. So there's going to be a new liability about a year and a half down the road from now that needs to be picked up on the statement of net position. So it won't impact 2017, but it certainly is something to be aware of because the number, it won't be as substantial as the new pension reporting standard, but it is going to be significant to the county. Lastly, I wanted to point out the second row up from the bottom. The unrestricted net position of the county decreased from a deficit of $23,644,141 down to $30,344,124 deficit as of December 31st, 2016. That change in unrestricted net position was $6,699,983. Again, largely related to those two changes in non-cash items, but still that required almost $8 million of expense to be recognized, non-cash expense to be recognized, which is the reason for that significant decrease in unrestricted net position. Next, if you turn to the very next page, 21, we get a look at the comparative revenues and expenses of the county for each of the past 2 fiscal years. Really just a couple of rows I wanted to point out here. If you look 6 rows up from the bottom in the total government, 2015, the total expenses for the county were $83,514,729. That number increased to $90,429,545 for the year ended December 31st, 2016. Doesn't mean that the county spent an extra $7 million. What it does mean is that there's additional non-cash expenses as a result of the new pension reporting standards that had to be picked up and allocated to the various functions during 2016. And 3 rows up from the bottom, the change in net position. Again, this is the accrual basis of accounting, so in the corporate world we would call that net income. In 2015 was $1,707,647, and that compares to a decrease in net position or net loss of $4,482,605 for the year ended December 31st, 2016. Next, if you want to turn to page 31, we get into the fund financial statements. And if there were any members of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board here right now, they would be upset with me for referring to this as cash basis financial statements, but I'm going to call it cash basis anyway. This is the more immediate amount of equity that the county has at its disposal as of December 31st, 2016. So here in the general fund, we see total fund balance of $12,345,702. That is the second row up from the bottom in the very far left column. And if you go all the way across to the total governmental funds, you can see total fund balances of $21,909,370. So across all of the funds, about a $22 million fund balance as of December 31st, 2016. One item I did want to point out here is that the unassigned fund balance is a negative amount of $1,395,000 as of December 31st, 2016 in the other governmental funds. What happens in financial reporting for governments, we take all of the non-major funds and we lump them into one column on these financial statements. If any of those funds have a deficit fund balance, we report it as a negative unassigned fund balance. That's what that number represents. And it is the sum of the deficit in the 2 debt service funds for which the county passed a deficit elimination plan back on July 27. So that has already been addressed and filed to Treasury to make sure that the county remains compliant, even though it is reporting a deficit fund balance in its funds. Next, if you turn 2 more pages to page 33, this too is on the modified accrual basis of accounting, and we can see the revenues collected during 2016 compared to the expenditures paid during 2015. The most important fund, the general fund, had an increase of $2,829,190, and across all of the governmental funds, 3 rows up from the bottom in the very far right column, you can see that there was an increase of $3,268,351. So not only did the general fund had an increase in fund balance during 2016, but if we were to look at all the other funds and aggregate them, they too had about a $400,000 increase in fund balance during 2016. One thing worth noting, the increase in fund balance in the general fund was much larger during 2016 than it has been in prior years. Really a couple of reasons for that. Number one, that the appropriations out of the general fund were significantly less during 2016 compared to prior years. In addition to that, there were some expenses for vacancies in various positions that were not necessarily funded during filled during 2016. That led to an overall decrease in general fund expenditures during 2016 compared to prior years. And I've actually got a quick chart put together that we'll get to later on to see those changes as well. Now we go all the way to page 73, which brings us to the footnote section of the audit report. This schedule shows the the changes in the net pension liability that the county recognized during 2016. So the very top row, the net pension liability in the upper right-hand corner shows 12/31/15's net pension liability at $49,821,631. And then underneath that, you see the various increases and decreases based on earnings and contributions from the county, contributions from the employees, things of that nature. Overall, there was a net increase in the net pension liability just of the county, this is exclusive of pavilions, of $4,517,224, leading to an ending net pension liability of $54,338,855. One row I want to point out as a non-recurring item, or at least we hope it to be non-recurring, is the changes in assumptions, which is about 5-6 rows down. You can see that the changes in assumptions led to an increase in net pension liability of $4,941,688. Two assumptions changed. Number one, the discount rate that the county has been assuming in prior years as adopted by the MERS Pension Board was 8.25%. So all of the resources that the county has been setting aside, MERS was assuming 8.25% was going to be earned in return on those investments. They changed it on the 2016 actuarial valuation down to 8%. So that decreased discount rate led to one piece of that change in assumption. In addition to that, MERS looked at the mortality tables. In other words, people are just living longer. So they updated the life expectancy for the retirees. Those two items led to that $4,941,688 increase in net pension liability. This doesn't happen on an annual basis. It might be something that MERS takes a look at every 3 to 5 years or so. So it's not recurring. We don't expect that to be present on the December 31st, 2017 audit report. But certainly it was the most significant reason for that increase.
Did that affect the whole 2016, or did it happen during 2016, so just part of 2016?
It was, the calculation was done during 2016. Under the new pension reporting standards, any changes in assumption needs to be flushed through the net pension liability immediately, so that it's not being amortized over a period of time, it's expensed immediately.
Okay. What was the date that they changed it?
It was during the process of their 2016 valuation. I don't know the exact date.
But it essentially affected the whole year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tom, did you have a
Just a slight correction, if I may. The discount rate went from 8.25 to 7.75, not 8.
8 this year.
8.0.
But there's a
8.0.
Go ahead.
But there's also an imputed 0.25% administrative fee, which brings it down to 7.75. So that's the real rate of return, but the discount rate is 8%.
With the administrative fees.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I wanted to point out the bottom schedule on this page as well. We can see the net pension liability of the county. We had to put together a sensitivity analysis in order to fully comply with the new pension reporting standard. This shows what the county is going to pay in over the remaining actuarial term to MERS, assuming an 8% discount rate, which is the $54,338,855. If the market does 1% better than expected and actually earns a rate of return of 9%, that number decreases by $8 million approximately to $46,039,097. So just gives the readers an idea of what the market performance is going to do to the net pension liability over the remainder of the actuarial term. Conversely, if the market only earns 7% rate of return over the actuarial term, that number increases by roughly $10 million up to $64,080,780. Again, this is just county, not we're still excluding the pavilions. So just gives an idea as to what market performance is going to do to the county's future cash flow. Next, if you want to turn 4 more pages to 77, we get to the pavilions net pension liability, and we see similar performance during 2016 for pavilions. The net pension liability in the upper right-hand corner was $8,837,633 for the pavilions. We can see the changes in assumptions, 4 rows down, showing an increase in net pension liability of $1,712,954. That being the single largest reason for the almost $1.2 million increase in net pension liability for pavilions, leading to an ending net pension liability of $10,009,110. And again, looking at that same sensitivity analysis, the 10 million is assuming an 8% market rate of return. If 9% is earned, it decreased to $6,018,079, so about a $4 million decrease. Conversely, if the market does 1% less than expected and only earns 1% or a 7% rate of return on those investments, it increases to $14,814,572. Next, we get all the way to the very back end of the report. We get into the single audit section. So if you turn to page 197, and then flip 11 more pages after that, you'll get to page 11. So this is the single audit compliance section. Here, a couple items I wanted to point out. We look at the schedule of findings and question cost on page 11 of the single audit section. We are required to take a look at the internal controls of the county as part of our federal single audit testing, as well as our financial statement testing. And if we see a control that's poorly designed or a control that's well designed but not effectively operating, we are required to put those in writing and bring those to the attention of the board. And if you look in the financial statements, you can see that there were no material weaknesses. There were no significant deficiencies that we put into writing to bring to the board's attention. If you look a little bit further down, you can see that there were some findings that were disclosed in relation to the new uniform guidance. It's a material noncompliance. I just briefly wanted to touch on those and discuss what those findings mean. You can find them starting on the very next page, page 12. Again, these are immaterial noncompliance, so not necessarily anything that's flowing through to the financial statements and that required any type of adjusting journal entries, but these are things required by the uniform guidance that need to happen. One of them being written procedures required by OMB's uniform grant guidance. One of the more common findings that we see, there are 25 instances where the feds required a large number of policies to be put in writing, and the county's dwindled it down to just a couple that need to be put in writing to fully comply. And in working with Jody, I know the county is working towards resolving this and fully resolving it during 2017. Next, if you turn to page 13, during the course of our testing over the federal programs, in particular the child support enforcement, we noted some expenditures for items that we did not feel were consistent with the county's purchasing policy. Not necessarily in violation of the uniform guidance, but because we need to look at the uniform guidance and the county federal, or the county's purchasing policy in conjunction with each other, we felt that these expenditures, though minor in nature, needed to be put into writing. So again, not huge dollars, certainly falls into the immaterial non-compliance category, but items that we feel should have been are questionable as to whether or not those are allowed costs. Next, internal controls. If you look on page 14, required by uniform guidance. There was one instance we didn't see any violations where any employees were overpaid or underpaid, but we did feel that there was a control that needed to be improved with regard to how payroll was being, how pay wages were being increased and approved by department heads, in particular, again, with the child support enforcement grant. We noted it during 2016. We also looked at subsequent controls with regard to how pay increases were adjusted during 2017, and there was there were changes already made in 2017 to make sure that those pay rate adjustments were properly approved by department heads. However, during 2016, the year that we were auditing, is when we saw one pay raise in particular that had weak backup support. And then lastly, if you want to turn to page 15, we get a look at the prior year findings and the status of each of those. So first, 2015-001, prior period adjustment and material audit adjustments. During prior year audits, there were various adjusting journal entries proposed by auditors. those matters were fully resolved during the course of 2016. So one finding was, that finding was entirely resolved. Next, 2015-002, review of pavilions, general journal entries. Again, during the course of our testing, we noted that matter was also fully resolved. 2015-003, documented approval of grant disbursements. So in other words, appropriate backup support and approvals over the payables vouchers and things of that nature. During the course of our testing, we did not see any exceptions to that, and we consider that to be resolved. And then the last one, 2015-04, the written procedures required by OMB's uniform guidance. That too is a repeat finding for which the county is in the process of fully resolving. Just a couple of quick charts that I wanted to walk through to show 5-year trends over certain elements of the county's financial statements, one being the general fund balance, as well as the unrestricted net position of the county for each of the past 5 fiscal years. Here, this first slide shows the total fund balance and cash and investments within the general fund for each of the past 5 fiscal years. So again, we're looking at a very short-term focus. How is the general fund doing? We're not looking at any long-term liabilities here, so the net pension liability is not included in any of this, of these performance indicators. This is simply fund balance equity in the general fund. And you can see very stable 2012 through 2015 with a substantial increase in 2016 being the fund balance or the blue charts. And then the cash. Normally, we see a fairly strong correlation between general fund balance and cash and investments, and we can see a very strong relationship between the two. As general fund balance, we can see an increase, especially in 2016, in those cash and investments. The next slide takes a look at total and unassigned fund balance as a percentage of general fund expenditures and transfers out. Again, 17% being the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association benchmark, 15% being the county's fund balance policy, and you can see a very stable increase over time. 2012, it was as low as 10.9%, a steady increase each year up to 21.45% as of December 31st, 2016. That's unassigned fund balance. When we look at total fund balance, we see a similar relationship from 22% up to 35.4% at December 31st, 2016. Just a real quick snapshot here of what the general fund revenues and expenditures have looked like for each of the past 5 fiscal years. The blue line being revenues, we can see a steady increase over each of the past 5 fiscal years. And with the expenditure side being the red bar or the red line, you can see fairly consistent with a slight dip during 2016, leading to a very healthy increase in general fund balance during December 31st, 2016. In addition to the revenues and expenditures, these two lines represent the transfers in and transfers out of the general fund for each of the past 5 fiscal years. And again, we see fairly stable amounts. The red line being transfers out, and again, we can see a large decrease in 2016. 2015, the transfers out were roughly 11 million. The number dipped a little bit below 10 million during 2016. So this chart here, or this line, shows the overall change in fund balance for the general fund each of the past 5 fiscal years. For the 5 years, show an increase in general fund balance, and 2016 shows roughly a $2.8 million increase in fund balance. These first 5 slides are all pretty much showing good news. So very stable general fund financial condition. However, when we take a look at the long-term focus of accounting and we factor in OPEB and net pension liability, the numbers aren't as favorable. And so looking at these charts here, we can see 2012 through 2016, we've got the blue, which is showing the unrestricted net position for governmental activities. That's all the county's governmental funds. And then we've got the red the red charts showing the unrestricted net position for the business type activities, primarily being pavilions and delinquent tax revolving funds. And you can see a very very stable amounts for each of those unrestricted amounts, 2012 through 2014, and then a very large sudden decrease in 2015 and again in 2016. And 2015 was the first year that the new pension reporting standard was reported by the county, leading to that decrease. Just looking at governmental activities alone, it was roughly $9 million of unrestricted net position in 2014. There was roughly a $49 million net pension liability that needed to be recorded in 2015, taking the unrestricted net position in governmental activities all the way down to almost $40 million deficit at 2015. And again, we had the large increase in net pension liability in governmental activities in 2016, leading to an even larger decrease in the unrestricted net position for governmental activities. Looking at the red charts for the business type funds, you can still see a large sudden dip in 2015 and 16, but not to the point where it brings those unrestricted amounts below zero. Just a couple of items I wanted to point out here. This data is taken directly from page 93 of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Really, the only thing that I wanted to point out here is the net pension liability, which is about 3/4 of the way down, the $49.8 million at December 31st, 2015, and $54.3 million at December 31st, 2016. So those obviously being the two biggest reasons for that decrease in the unrestricted net position. And then this next chart simply shows the $8.8 million of net pension liability that the business type funds had to show at December 31st, 2015, and the $10,009,110 at December 31st, 2016. Lastly, we've got two more quick items I wanted to point out. The actuarial accrued liability for the county's OPEB is $7,704,335. And as of December 31st, 2016, $3,149,271 of the $7.7 million is being reported in the statement of net position. December 31st, 2018, the difference is going to be picked up on the county statement of net position. So just something to be aware of. That number is not set in stone. Actuarial evaluations will need to be performed in between here and then. There's a large number of moving parts and pieces that go into it, but it at least provides a reasonable idea of what that new OPEB liability is going to be when that standard is fully implemented. That is just the county only. If we go to the very next chart, we can see that the pavilions has another $5.6 million of actuarial accrued liability, in addition to the one, which is above and beyond the $1,471,452 that's already reported on the statement of net position. So there will be another substantial increase in the OPEB liability reported on the December 31st, 2018 audit report for the county and its business type activities. Those are the financial highlights I wanted to cover, and I'm more than happy to answer any further questions that the board might have.
Tom?
I want to thank you for, and the firm you work with, to step up and help us when we were changing firms. That's very important. And you took the job, so I really appreciate that. Bonding is something we've been discussing, obviously. Millage is something else we've discussed. But when you look at our unfunded pension debt, do you have a recommendation for what percent you would suggest we be at, other than 100% perhaps?
Well, over the course of the next 23 years approximately, that number is going to go all the way up to 100%. Mm-hmm. So as long as the county continues to meet its annual required contributions and stays on track with MERS, it will be fully funded. I know MERS likes to see the number be north of 60%. That's kind of the benchmark. Anybody that falls below that 60% mark kind of gets on the MERS radar. And I know they've been reaching out to communities to come up with strategies to get it at least up to that point. I don't know that I necessarily have a recommendation. Ultimately, that's up to the board to make.
Well, we've been making steps towards finding money in different places, like we sold some property.
Sure.
That's probably looked at fondly, by people who look at our rating. But I don't expect you to make a recommendation on bonding or millage or something like that, but I do appreciate that you go back to the 60% as some standard that MERS has set. So,
Sure.
Yeah. Another question is it possible to explain at this point why back in September of 2015, when they were looking towards the 2016 budget, at first they predicted we were going to be $3 million short, and then later it was received a lot of publicity, we would be $4 million short, and then we end up with a surplus in the fund balance. And what part of that surplus in the fund balance was due to vacancies? Because there were some unfilled posts at that time over that year.
If I may interject. So neither Mr. Verlin nor myself were here at the time that those projections were done, but if you wouldn't mind flipping back, I actually noted while you were going through the slides, if you wouldn't mind flipping back to the 2014 data where the fund balance was used and expenditures had increased significantly. You'd go back one more, perhaps. One more, again, well, there's use of fund balance there that it shows pretty clearly in 2014. But all three of those slides that you presented, I think, give a good picture of the fact that I believe, and again, I'm responding on behalf of Mr. Verlin because he wasn't here at the time, and I at least have slightly more knowledge about the subject. But they had used the most recent audited financial statements as the basis from which then to prepare projections. The projections were actually done in 2015, again, based on the most recent year of audited financial statements that would have been 12/31/2014. Very different picture than 15 and then 16, but that was the most recent audit that they had at the time on which they could rely. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the things that I found to go back to the date is the county even had their own on their own letterhead on September 29th of 2015 that they were projecting that they were going to be $3.4 million short for the 2016 budget, and then into 2016 when they started to look at it more seriously, it was more like $4 million, and I think that was inaccurate, and I continued to research it. Because one of the things that happened, which I thought was wrong, was that the county board was reduced in pay to $1 a year, and some of the benefits were taken away, and I thought it was for a false reason. So I was kind of looking at, the final summary of 2016 to give me some kind of idea as to why I would feel that way.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments, Ron?
And Jody, you might know this, but you'd mentioned that at one of your pages there that I'm thinking $440,000 because of personnel spots unfilled. Is that the number of? Was that accurate? Where we had spots left vacant?
Right.
Was it 440,000? I didn't get it.
I don't have that information right in front of me. I know that I had done some analysis when we were preparing for the 2016 audit, and I anticipated some question of how did we get to this $2 million surplus, that I had looked at, what were unfilled positions, so what had we budgeted for compensation that we didn't actually expend, and some of those major items, there were a handful of actually like one-time major items that contributed, and I'm happy to re-forward that out to the board.
And I thought when you went through, you had just said that there's like 440,000 or...
Yeah, I believe it was the memo that made reference to $420,000 for vacancies.
And I would just say that, Mayfield Township and Grant Township, they've not come to me, said that they felt services were shortened, because of it, so maybe their positions don't need to be filled.
I'm sorry, what did you just say, Rob?
That with if there was $420,000 of positions not filled, that Grant Township and Mayfield Township, that they didn't, when I've been at the meetings, they've not felt that their services have been shorted. They're...
Gotcha.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Anything at all?
Nice
Okay.
job.
Yes, thank you
All in
very
all,
much.
it's a very clean audit, which
It
is
is. It really is.
important.
It shows how good a job Jody's doing, too,
And the team.
and staff, yeah.
And for an accounting geek like me, it's riveting to listen to. I know, not everybody feels that way, but I do.
You know, and maybe one other thing that I meant to hit on briefly. I know that certainly technology is a significant topic for the county right now. I mean, I can't go into much detail. I'm not as privy to the day-to-day needs of technology. The one thing that I do think is worth mentioning is throughout the course of our audit, during fieldwork in particular, there were several basic reports, standard reports that, we audited roughly 150 municipalities across the state of Michigan, and these standard reports are readily generated from accounting systems. Here at the county, we would request these reports, standard reports, and IT would need to be involved to generate the reports, and they would come out in CSV type formats and not necessarily all that easy for us to use, and it would take an hour or two for IT to run those reports. So I will say that I do believe there is significant opportunity to enhance reporting and efficiency by taking a look at some other options. That is something that was certainly unique to Grand Traverse County during the course of our field work, and I think just given the fact that coincidentally there's a significant amount of technology talk right now, I thought I would at least mention that briefly.
Were there any negative notes because of the way that we've been keeping records? Okay.
Nope.
No.
Would you not want to do the job again because it was so burdensome for you?
No.
Okay,
No.
good to know. I figured.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know if you can tell us this, but we've increased our amortization period from 12 to 16 years. We sent in more money to go towards the MERS pension debt. And then if everything stayed the same and they didn't change the rate, or the economy didn't change drastically, we'd be sending them about $5.6 million a year. For what, would that be 16 years?
5.9.
5.9.
5.9 for 16 years.
5.9 for 16 years, okay. That's the exact number. Can we sustain that? I mean, do you think we can afford to do that? Or should we be looking for ways to reduce it to another figure, which, like in the $3 million range, for example? Would that be something you think we could bear the brunt of easier? Because it sounds like a lot to me to be obligated to for that many years per year.
As an auditor, my job is to look backwards. Unfortunately, I haven't necessarily done any type of analysis to figure out what is sustainable and what is workable within the county's budget. So unfortunately, I really am not able to intelligently answer that question, at least not at this time.
Anybody else? Okay, great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, we're going to move on to some old unfinished business. Several weeks ago, we had talked about the pension stabilization plans. This was a sort of a continued discussion from June 21st, when only 5 members were present, and so I brought it back to discuss again. I know that Cheryl and Sunny were missing for that conversation, and we had talked about bonding, and we had talked about sales of assets. So who would like to start the discussion? Bob?
No bonding. How about that? You kind of know my opinion on bonding. I think we're just gambling with it. In a simple world, it sounds so great, but it's not. At one time, we were 100% funded. And if we get 100% funded again, or even 80% with bonding, I got a feeling the market will tank before we're all said and done, and then you got to come up with that difference again. So.
I will state the same thing that I said before, which was I'm not for saying no to bonding completely and in perpetuity or for any amount of time, like we did with, I think we voted at the time to not go for a millage. I'm really not in favor of saying not bonding at all. It's not good for us right now. And so I think that we need to get through our budgeting process for next year. I think we need to see how things kind of roll out. But we need to keep it as an option. on the table. We need to keep it as a possibility. The governor does have a task force on this to see what can be done. I think there's a lot of moving parts, and I would hate to jump the gun on bonding, but I would hate to say no completely, never, to close that option to us. Cheryl?
And I would agree, which is somewhat of a change in position for me. Duly noted, I hope. I don't think now is the time to bond for this particular issue. I think that you're absolutely correct that there could be significant changes from the state. I think that OPEB could disappear at the stroke of a pen, and I would be thrilled if that were to happen. I think that would have a very positive impact on our bottom line. I still would support coming up with some sort of a health savings account for our employees. I mean, I fully would like to see us move in that direction right now as an alternative to continuing the OPEB drum, because I think it's a system that is not sustainable. I don't think it's equitable, and I don't think it's the right thing for us at this point in time. But I also think that, we never forestall remedies. We could look at a millage in 2 years. We could look at bonding in 2 years if any of us are here. But for now, at this point in time, I would agree. I'm not in favor of pursuing bonding.
Dan?
Well, I've always hated bonding, and I...
Hate's such a strong word, Dan.
Well, I don't know. I'm tired for all the shuffleboarding. I'm a little grumpy.
You're a little cranky tonight.
Yeah, I'm cranky.
All right.
I don't think we should bond, and I'm glad to see people looking at it that way. Never say never. In the future, it's a possibility, but I'm glad that this board is looking at not bonding right now, and especially because we've not really looked at, this board has not really addressed where we can save money yet. And so it bothers me to go to the public and ask them to give us money, which is bonding. It's just basically a stealth tax. And I don't mean that in terms of the jail, new jail I'd be happy to bond for, but to borrow money to pay off a debt, that's a stealth tax. And I don't want to go to my citizens to have them pay that tax before we've done our due diligence to cut costs.
Sonny?
Well, I think a lot of things have changed. I still firmly believe that if we had bonded in 2014 when we had the discussions, we wouldn't be anywhere near the situation that we are right now. I agree right now that I don't know that right today there's a reason for us to bond this. I think in my mind, two things have happened. One, the economy's come around a little bit. The growth in our community is going to be huge. But more importantly, MERS finally brought their ass to the table. I don't know how else to say it. They just flat would not have any discussions with us about any options. And they finally, absolutely, MERS coming to the table is by far the greatest change in our pension situation than what we had.
We could say posterior would work.
The idea that we make them a one-time payment and they fix the payment for 16 years, we can figure out how to budget that $5.9 million. But when they come to us and say, okay, Grand Traverse County, your payment for this year is 3.9, 4.3, whatever it was, and then at the end of the year, they didn't meet their performance part of it, and oh, by the way, next year you're going to have to add another $1.2 million to that. We can't budget for that. We can't plan for that. So I think bringing MERS to the table is by far the greatest thing that's happened to us for this pension debt. And you're right, the governor's going to make some changes in this thing. OPEB is, whether it's changed legislatively or whether we can negotiate those with our bargaining units. I think one of the things we have to really focus on as we move forward with the bargaining for the 13 labor units that we have, plus the 2 associations, is we have to bring all those people to the table and talk about concessions, whether those concessions be in benefits or post-employment benefits. Some of those concessions are going to have to be made in order for us to move forward.
Amen.
Okay. So we're good with that. Everybody's had their say on that one. We had a discussion on the sales of assets. Did anybody have anything additional to add? I think we discovered a lot of the stuff that we had looked into is not possible. Cheryl?
Well, I haven't heard back on this building. I know we were looking for what we could possibly sell it for, and I guess there was supposed to be an appraisal that was done, and then we were going to have further conversation with the city on whether they would consider.
We have not heard back from the city on their interest in selling it. John, you might have, I asked you at one time to talk to Marty Coburn. I'm sorry, can I ask him that?
Yeah, please, step up if you have something to add,
Do you
please.
have any updates on that?
Good evening, John Syke, Grand Traverse County Planning Director. Yes, we did speak with the city, but we have not heard back from them. It didn't appear that there was great interest at this time, but we officially really haven't heard back from them.
But we don't have any numbers. We don't even know what it's worth. I mean, I thought that was the piece we were waiting on, was we were going to have an appraisal on this building, which sits on this beautiful piece of property, along with the adjacent parking lot, and we were going to try and figure out what it's worth. Are we not going to do that now? I thought at one point I read a memo that we were going to have an appraisal done on it, and...
Can we do that?
Well, why couldn't we? I mean, anything can be appraised.
I agree.
Is that a possibility, Tom?
Certainly can have
Okay.
an appraisal.
So we at least know what we're
There was a memo
talking
out with
about.
options, but
Right.
I don't think we got feedback in terms of direction as to if you want us to get an appraisal, we'd be happy to get an appraisal.
Well, I mean, in order to negotiate, and, you know, I'm just spitballing as a lawyer here, but you kind of have to know what it is you're negotiating for. And
the value
I
is.
had a conversation with the mayor about the possibility of the city taking over the Civic Center, which at one point in time, they talked about being perhaps willing to do. And I said, maybe you'd be willing to do that, and the response was, well, not if you're going to, you know, take us to the cleaners on it. And so then I said, well, what about if we were to give you the Civic Center and you would give us your interest in the governmental center? Because their interest in this building is about 27%. So if we knew what the value of this building was, we would know what 27% was worth, and then we would know whether or not the Civic Center being gifted to them was a good trade. But right now, we don't have the data in order to even begin that conversation.
Okay.
There was a discussion that you and I had, and I suggested you talk to the mayor.
And I did.
And I talked to the city manager and asked what their interest level was, and, you know, didn't say no or yes, but said would get back to me. I've not heard yet.
Right.
And of course, probably the mistake I made was not saying, can you get back to me by August 2nd at 3 o'clock? You know, it just goes on, it goes on and on.
Sure.
And, but I'm happy to reopen that. And I did ask John to go down and talk to you as well, to follow up on that. But I do think if we have the ability to sell it, or do something with the property, we do have to get an appraised value and spend the money to get that appraisal, what they would bring in the parking lot too, of course. And maybe separate those two out, because they could be separate parcels of that. So if it's the board's interest in doing that, we can go out and get a certified appraisal, have that brought back, and share that with the city, and start discussions on that basis, if you'd like.
I'd like to know what it's worth.
One more piece to that.
Yes, ma'am.
And it ties into, again, I wasn't part of this, but my understanding was that when the Lafreniere complex was built, there was talk at that time of moving a lot of the county services out to the Lafreniere location, including perhaps a jail, including perhaps law enforcement. So, again, you know, this is all part of what was a master plan at one point in time, what was a strategic plan. I'm just saying, I mean, that's what I've been told. So, to move toward that vision that was, put out there a number of years ago, it would be helpful to have present-day data that would give us information that would inform our ability to make a decision about whether we want to go out that way or not. So I think it's important that we have that information.
In terms of next steps, you have two next steps. One, we can get an estimate of what the cost would be to get an appraisal of both properties, or we could get the appraisals. What was
I'd
your...
say get the appraisals.
Just get the appraisals.
Just get the appraisals?
Yeah, I think that it would be valuable information to have.
All right.
If we talk about this
John,
building and we
you
own 70-some% of this building, what does that mean?
I think
We need to know that.
75.6%.
Okay?
John?
I understand the appraisal, so if the idea of there would be some exchange of property, so my thought is that means that there would have to be relocation of some services to Lafreniere. So would you like us to investigate what the cost is for building structures out there that would house those services, or not go that far yet?
Let's start with an appraisal.
Let's just start and see what it's worth.
It's too complex.
May not be
Let's
worth
start with an
anything.
appraisal, and if we know what
Start
that
with
is,
that.
we can move
Sure.
along based on that number, and then
And
we'll...
is this, obviously, is this zoned commercial? Does anybody know?
I think it's probably zoned, probably governmental use of
Governmental,
some
yeah.
sort, or public, quasi-public use of some sort.
It'd be interesting, I'd be interested as part of that process, if you could, of what the potential would be to rezone it.
Rezone
Obviously, it would be worth significantly more as commercial.
it? More flexibility in zoning?
My
more
guess
value
is the
to this, right.
city probably doesn't have, it would be based on their master plan. My guess is they kind of plan this for public use, so it may require them to have some more thought
Could
into
you
that.
report back?
Yes.
That'd be great.
Sonny, you have a comment?
Well, over this discussion over the last few months about selling county assets, I've gotten a large amount of feedback from a lot of different people, some of it makes a lot of sense, some of it doesn't. But the bottom line is, if I were to look at county property, I had a pretty extensive discussion actually last night for a second time with Casey Cowell about he's adamant that the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitor and Convention Bureau should not be sitting where they're at. Those people can complete their functions in an office in Grand Traverse Mall. They do not need to have multi-million-dollar pieces of property overlooking the bay.
Well, I think the chamber won't have one in a period of, 20 years, that lease runs up, and then they don't have that facility, so that would be a
But
problem
the
for
point
them.
is, there's a lot of pieces of property that we look at. We can look at this piece of property. Yes, historically, it's always been here, it's always been used for this, but is that the best use of this property? And I think that's the discussion that Cheryl's having, is this the best use? I know for a fact that I've made the motion to move the jail and the sheriff's department up on top of Lafreniere Hill, and was asked to withdraw the motion one night because there was some other discussion that caused me to make the motion right then. But the bottom line is, if there's one piece of property that Grand Traverse County owns that I would certainly support not having, it is the Civic Center. Everyone believes that it's a city park. They do not believe it belongs to the county. They don't understand the difference. And I would, in all honesty, I could give the Civic Center to the city, in my mind, and not have to have the expense of maintaining it and operating it every year.
True.
The thing about it is, when we sell assets and we get cash, that's one-time money. If I did not have to maintain and operate the Civic Center every year, that's a couple $100,000 a year for forever.
Well, don't talk about that so much.
Yeah, they won't think, they may not think they're getting that good a deal. One other thing in terms of raising funds, just so you're aware of it, I am in discussions on the cell towers. The Park and Recs has 2 of those, and I'm seeing what we can get for the sale of those assets. And I should know, I'm hoping by August 15th is, not 3 o'clock, but August 15th is the date I should get information back on what someone would be willing to pay for those towers. 2 of them would go to the Park and Recs, but I did talk to them about a lump sum of cash, and they said they are very cooperative in terms of the pension legacy and would be happy to give a percentage of the proceeds if we did sell their cell towers to the county to lessen the reduction of legacy costs.
Okay. I know that I've been into our jail on a tour only. And
I've never been in there.
And then and I've been in the law enforcement center, and those buildings are not at all suited for what they're being used for. They are not appropriate. It is, if I can never go in the law enforcement building and find anything. Somebody always I have to have somebody walk me around to everything, so I get so lost in there. And
Tom can't find his office half the time.
it's an old bank building. It's not suited well for what it is being used for, and the jail is woefully, it's not good. So I am definitely all for investigating moving some of our services up to Lafreniere where there's more room,
$35 million.
where they were intended to be, where the buildings that are built suited for their use. So we can continue that when we find out what this building's worth. Thank you very much. Anything else on the sale of assets before we move on? We have establishment of pension stabilization trust, and I understand this was tabled from last Wednesday.
I have a comment on that.
How do we want to proceed on this one? I tried to watch the meeting last week. I couldn't figure out exactly, it went in and out, so. Yes, Dan?
I think this is very important that we do this because we have a pension stabilization plan, and if we don't have a trust that we bank the money in, if it's a line item thing, 2 or 3 boards from now, they can wrap it to pay the IT stuff. And not that they would, but this just secures it better. How can you have a pension stabilization plan if you don't have the trust? And it's very conservatively invested. There's vehicles for it already. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think the upfront cost is minuscule compared to what the benefit will have. And it lets the community know, and the more than that, the community, our employees know that we're seriously putting this money away for them. I think an official vehicle is very important.
Okay, I have a question on that. Can I ask my question? Maybe.
Well, you're the board chair. I was just going to give you the cost of what it is to set it up, is all.
Well, hold on. The question that I have is the use, when are the approved uses of that money? So is it so that if MERS comes to us in a particularly bad year and says the 5.9 that you budgeted for is not going to cut it, we need 6.2?
Yeah,
Because that is possible in a particularly bad year. That is possible. Or after a bad year, they could come back, although they've said they would keep it even. That is possible. So is that the prescribed use for this money? Because I don't want it to be used toward the 5.9. I want it specific that it's only used if they ask us for more than that.
That is, it's the stabilizing element of the pension stabilization plan used only when MERS comes back, or if there's a recession, and there's a need for additional funds to keep that 5.9, that's when you go to that. And that's why the investment strategy is on Public Act 20, which is so conservative, just T-bills and fixed assets. You're not playing the markets. You're not going to get as big a return, but you're protecting your principal asset base. That's what you're doing.
And Cheryl?
It is not an irrevocable trust, or at least it's not been presented as an irrevocable trust, correct?
Or is it?
Yes, yes.
It is.
It is irrevocable only for pension.
It hadn't been presented as a
Maybe that's not on
irrevocable
here.
trust. I'm sorry?
Is that's not on the paper, but is that what it
It hasn't been ever
is?
presented as irrevocable. It was presented as a pension stabilization trust that we could move money in and out of as a board.
No, I believe that the early memos that started discussing the concept all referred to it as an irrevocable pension
trust.
stabilization trust.
All right,
And-
well, I'm not in favor of an irrevocable trust. I think that we need the money liquid because of the fact that we just said that we want to control that money. I think that we can accomplish exactly the same thing by a line item in the budget that is called the pension stabilization account. And all we need to do is have a line item there, And I'll tell you what, I don't think there's a single person sitting at this table that would invade that line item. I'm saying anybody at this table, okay? And I can't bind future boards, okay? If you want to bind future boards, then you vote for an irrevocable trust, okay? I don't personally want to do that, okay? Because I don't know what the future holds for those boards. They may have to find money for law enforcement, for 911, for the health department, for whatever, and they won't have access to it because those funds are in an irrevocable account that some prior board decided they were going to set aside, okay? So I am not in favor of doing that.
Bob?
I completely disagree.
Well, of course you do.
Of course we do. I mean, I just think the fact, and you just kind of mentioned some of the reasons behind having it there instead of a line item. I mean, this county has been horrendous, has a horrendous track record on our pension obligation. And I don't see, if we get far behind, that getting any better. I can just envision a future board saying, look, we can take this amount of money and let's increase expenditures in this department and whatnot. So I think, number one, we're not talking about a whole lot of money, but my thought is to make it an irrevocable trust so that people do have to work out the problems at that point too. We're always looking for easy solutions. All the low-hanging fruit's been cut out of this county, and nothing else has really been done. Well, not much has been done as far as really trimming anything else. So I support the trust just because I think it does lock in that option there, or obligation. So.
Sonny?
Well, a couple things. One, I've always contended, and I still contend, that this pension debt should be a line item in our budget. The idea that all of these pensions are charged back to each of the departments doesn't allow any of us to track it whatsoever. It makes our labor costs look absolutely absurd at what it costs, you know, to do anything, whether it be to house a prisoner in the jail where it $119 or something like that. And we all know that that's not real, but a big piece of it is pension debt that's charged back to that account because many of those officers were on defined benefits programs. So historically, I really believe we need to fix that in our budget process. You know, and I've heard all the arguments about, well, you know, because we get 4E grants and this grant and that grant, we can charge some of that back to it. So what? You know, the fact is for us, we're better off to put this pension debt, all of this pension debt, in a budget center that we can account money to. As far as the investment of this money, the county treasurer can invest this money in the same exact things, but in a simple trust and agency account in her paperwork. And she can invest it in the same manners that is allowed underneath this. I don't know why we need to create a special trust to do that. The treasurer can have a trust and agency account in her accounting and invest it in the exact same manners. But most importantly, it does not count toward our unfunded liability. Unless the money goes to MERS, it does not count toward our unfunded liability. It still stays there. The percentage of funding does not improve because we have $1 million, $3 million, $5 million in a trust fund. Our percentage of funding does not improve.
So what would be the rationale behind not giving the money to MERS? Not giving it to them to invest and work for us? What would be the rationale behind that?
The idea is if you give the monies to MERS, they're going to get into their 7.758% discount rate, which puts you in more volatile assets and you're playing the market. This trust fund is not playing the market. Now, whether it's in a line item, it's not counted with MERS, nor in the trust is it counted with MERS. The whole key to this is in the pension stabilization plan is to have a stable 5.9 pension going forward so you can plan on some of the other contractual agreements that you have to do long term. You need a stable fund, that you have a principal-protected strategy to protect the asset base, which Public Act 20 gives you in terms of T-bonds and fixed assets. So if you don't have the trust, which is a stabilizing factor for the pension stabilization plan, you've negated one of the reasons of having the stabilization element because you've taken that away.
Dan?
I think that this county has done such a bad job at handling this retirement thing over the years that we owe it to our citizens and our employees to put this money aside in an irrevocable trust. It's a promise that, and that was the trouble in the past, that we didn't fund this thing for emergencies that came up. Buildings had to be built, raises that had to be given, and special retirements. We need to get serious about this and back up our employees with this irrevocable promise. And yes, I realize it won't go against what we owe MERS, but that's not the idea of it. The idea of it is give us stability.
Anybody else?
I don't support the pension stabilization trust as an irrevocable trust. I think we can handle it as a budget item. I pretty much agree with what Sonny says, and that the county treasurer can invest the money that we bring in as proceeds from anything that doesn't have to go directly into to MERS. Because if we did bond, the money would have to go directly into MERS. We wouldn't be able to put it on the side. But, you know, if we were to sell another piece of property and we take in proceeds, I think I trust this board and the future boards to not misspend the money. I trust that they would do that. That's what we would ask them to do if we don't have a pension stabilization trust that's a irrevocable trust. We're saying that we trust people and that we can live with that. That's our comfort.
I'll just say that history repeats itself, and if we don't put it aside, I think the money's going to be gone, and it won't be there to stabilize the pension.
What happens to the money in the pension, in the irrevocable pension stabilization trust in the 16th year when we have paid all that we're going to pay and we are well-funded and there's still money in it? What happens to the irrevocability then?
So that speaks to, in your earlier question as well, about what the parameters would be, is outlined in a trust agreement, the parameters by which money could then be transferred. So whether it be, like whether there are triggers about market performance, which would trigger the currently stable pension payment to MERS during that 16 years to rise, that there could be then triggers about market performance, and then also a sunset to the trust so that when we achieve, for instance, 95% funding or 100% funding, that those then assets are immediately liquidated and transferred. They'd already be liquidated, but transferred to MERS and the trust dissolved so that then we would not be holding that separate. After 16 years, I think in all the scenarios that had been shown in our previous study sessions, we are likely to have some ongoing trailing cost, but whereas we may be paying $5.9 million now, they're maybe paying $1 million, so it could offset then those ongoing costs past the 16th year as well.
So you would bring the trust and all of those parameters back to the board for approval, correct?
Yes, I believe that that was in the final whereas, that you, as board chair, were given the authority to execute the agreement upon final approval by the board.
Okay. And the board, the different boards as they go along, if this irrevocable trust was in place, would be able to decide which monies go into this trust and which ones do not.
Correct, yes. So the establishment of the trust does not obligate this or any future board to fund the trust. So if, for instance, in the second action item for funding the Whitewater Township property, if that were the only assets that were ever contributed to the trust, there would be no future obligation by that action.
How much does it cost to set up the trust, I think you were going to say?
Yeah, it's-
$5,000?
Yeah, I can comment on that. So my recommendation to Jody was we engage Miller Canfield. Miller Canfield is probably one of the top municipal finance law firms in the state, and they have expertise in setting up trusts. So they not only gave us advice on setting up a pension trust, but also OPEB trusts and other pension obligation issues. Their total bill as of date is just under $7,000. So if I was to break that down into what they spent, what we've spent on this issue, it's probably around $5,000.
Is there any further cost beyond that?
There will be,
They're
but
ready
it's
to do-
probably going to be under $1,000.
So they've already established the trust.
They've prepared the documents.
So we just need to say yes, and it'll be a done deal.
Or say no.
But the cost is already there. We've already paid for it, is what you're saying.
Right.
Bob?
Madam Chair, I move that we direct administration to establish a pension stabilization trust fund. Support.
So moved by Commissioner Johnson, supported by Commissioner Lathrop. Any further discussion? Roll call, Bonnie.
Mayor,
No?
Lathrop,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Gorfulet,
No.
Klaus,
Yes.
Wheelock,
No.
Crawford.
Yes.
Passed.
Okay. We're going to move on to appropriation of the Whitewater Township property sale proceeds, which was also postponed from last
So
week.
that was 87% would go into the trust for the pension legacy, and 13% would go into the OPEB trust.
Which we already have the OPEB.
That's already set up in MERS, yeah.
What are the thoughts on this, Sonny?
I believe that through the whole discussion about selling county assets, including the Whitewater Township property, we told people repeatedly that that money would be used to pay our MERS debt. I believe that that money should flat go to paying that defined benefit debt.
And not in the trust.
I don't believe it should go to the trust, and I don't believe we had any discussion about paying a portion of it to the OPEB.
Okay. Anybody else?
Madam Chairman, just because for discussion, I will make a motion that the entire proceeds of the Whitewater projects or property sale be forwarded to MERS toward our unfunded liability for defined benefits.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Wheelock, supported by Commissioner Gorfulet. Any other discussion? Yes, Dan?
What is administration advised? Do you want us in your plan to take this money and put it in the trust?
Well, our recommendation was that we've already had the agreement with MERS at the 5.9 million, and we're going to be implementing that. This would start funding the trust for any unexpected changes that came in, market volatility, or, MERS comes back and says so. That's why we broke it down that way, was that some would go into the trust for the health care, and 87% would go into the trust for, if it was set up for the pension stabilization. And then each one would have about $250,000 to start for any additional requests from MERS.
Yeah, so for that reason, I'm not going to support this motion. I think that we should fund this trust, and I think a lot of us thought about it. It has to go against our debt. We already have a plan. We've got payments every year. This extra money should go in the trust. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Bob?
Yeah, I just agree with Dr. Lathrop that I think we should put these funds into these trusts and let them go to work for us. I'm not sold on giving that to MERS. I mean, if we're going to start down that road, then let's grab every penny we can out of the budget and start sending it to MERS.
The point is, we repeatedly told the public that we would use the proceeds from the sale of that property to pay down that pension debt.
We've also repeatedly said, many people at this board have said that, well, any of these properties that's a drop in the bucket. I've heard that many times on this board of any other future sales.
Ron?
And this, going in this pension is paying down the debt. It's just going to be
At a
paying
later
down
date.
at a later date
Yeah.
and it's not going anywhere else.
Yep.
It's going for the pension debt.
Anybody else? Any opinion on
Well, I'll just
that?
throw in something lighter so everybody can take a sigh of relief. The Dow Industrial average went up to 22,000 today for the first time,
Yeah, who?
and I think it went up to 22,050 something. So, that's food for thought, and now it can be entered into the minutes of the meeting that when we are talking about the markets, that we were here tonight and witnessed this new all-time high of the Dow. So,
I don't know if that's going in.
That'll do nothing to
That
it.
does help.
I feel so
Not
much
really.
better now, Tom.
So yeah, I took your mind off everything else for a second there. You were
not
thinking
really,
about
but-
what stocks you have or something, so.
So I'll weigh in, I guess. I think that I do agree with Sunny that that when we started talking about selling this property, that it was stated that it would be for direct pay down of the pension. I think future properties, it can be stated right up front, this goes into this trust. And we can proceed in that manner. I think in this case, though, we talked about this property over and over, and I do think that the public felt that that money was going to go into the pension plan this year.
Maybe another way to state it is that the trust didn't exist when we sold the property.
It didn't. The trust didn't exist. The theory of the trust wasn't out there when we started talking about the property. I think in this case, this property, the money should go directly to MERS. And now that the trust is established, that is another conversation for future properties. With that, what is the motion again?
Moved by Wheelock, seconded by Gore Follett, to put the sale of Whitewater Township proceeds all to the MERS unfunded pension debt.
Okay, so roll call vote, please.
Lathrop,
No.
Johnson,
No.
Gore Follett,
Yes.
Klaus,
No.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Passed.
Okay.
I think the thing we have to remember is we have two pension funds. And defined benefit pensions were stopped in this county in 2001, other than the units at the circuit court. The vast majority of our defined benefit program may only be 40% funded, but our defined contribution program is 100% funded. So the vast majority of our current employees, their retirement is 100% funded. We just have to figure out how do we meet the obligations of those other people, and somewhere along the way, I've probably read it, but I don't remember what it is. The number of employees that we actually have that are still employed that are on defined contribution or defined benefit program, and how many retired employees are drawing benefit. Because those are the people that we're talking about. It's not the vast majority of the current employees. They're on defined contribution programs, and their retirements are 100% funded.
I have a question on that. You're right conceptually on that. A concern I have, and I think we have a little bit of a like problem here, is people are withdrawing funds from these 401ks to buy cars and buy different things, and so they're not as well funded as we would like them to have the security in retirement we would hope they would have. So it may be something down the
County's
road.
obligation is 100% funded.
Pardon me?
The county's obligation is 100% funded.
I understand that. It's just that there's a problem. I think we are probably, if we researched it, as much of the problem as I read in the financial periodicals, is people are pulling money out for loans and not paying them back. We might want to consider a policy where you restrict that, what people can take things out for, to make sure you're really forcing them to save for retirement, because I hear that's, with what I'm reading, is it's it's a real serious problem, and organizations can put some guidelines that, you know, allow them to make sure they have that money for retirement.
But the biggest reason people like 401s is that they're mobile, and they're their money. They can do with it what they want. You know, I don't currently, but I had an employee that I swear went every month and took the money out that I'd put in. You know, at least once a month he was taking money out, you know, and
His money.
Well, he had a portion, I had a portion, but by the end of the day, I think he was taking it out almost faster than I was putting it in, so.
Well, it's just a thought that I've been reading, that some organizations are very concerned about it, and some are exploring and actually putting in some guidelines for people to make it less available. And they're buying cars with it, and the cars depreciate, and then you have nothing. So just food for thought, is all.
Okay, we are going to move on to new business, and the first thing under new business that we added is an appointment to the Building Authority. We had interviews today with our ad hoc committee. That was myself, Commissioner Gorfulet, and Commissioner Wheelock, and we would like to bring forth to the board that our choice, our recommendation for, in addition to the Building Authority, would be Nick Agostinelli. So I will make the motion that we appoint Nick Agostinelli to the Building Authority for
Support.
his term. Okay. So supported by Commissioner Crawford, start again. Moved by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner Wheelock. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nick is appointed to the Building Authority. We move on to another, well, actually, it's old business, County Administrator Search. I am going to begin the conversation with a motion. I would move that the board offer the position of County Administrator to Vicki Uppel, and to authorize the board chair to negotiate a contract with Ms. Uppel.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Crawford and supported by Commissioner Mayer. Discussion. Bob.
You're dooming this county to failure. I think she'd be in way over her head. I cannot support this motion. I believe we need to start the process all over, and I think you're just settling now at this point to get someone in place to get the current administrator out of here. I really do not think that she is at the level we need yet. She's a very nice person. I just don't think she's there yet to take this over. You're talking about trying to get rid of the deputy administrator because you want to get rid of that person also, and you're going to really saddle her completely with just failure. I mean, you are setting her up to fail.
Dan?
I think you're looking for a puppet, and you'll have one in her. I think she's a weak candidate. She has only had 2 or 3 years' experience over a poor county of only 30,000 people. Her past history of jobs has had almost no managerial training in it. I cannot support her, and I think it's, if you thought the last time we made a rash decision and it didn't work out, this is even worse. That's a terrible motion.
Cheryl.
This is obviously sort of disappointing to hear this level of invective, because when we had the candidates here, I didn't hear any negative comments about Ms. Uppel. And actually, I heard from both Dan and Bob some fairly favorable things about how, you know, she presented better in person than she did on paper, and how lucky we were that we had, you know, a couple of strong candidates, and you know, I'm surprised because I thought she had a strong resume. I thought her experience currently of not only managing the county, but also managing a number of the roles within the county, including, I think, HR and some other functions, show that she's a very strong woman. and a very strong candidate. I did call her because James had given us the opportunity to ask additional questions, and I wanted the opportunity to just talk with her one-on-one. So I did call her, and, there had been some allegations that, there were some issues in Mississippi, and, there were some lawsuits or, some veiled things, and we talked about that, and of course, none of them had anything to do with her. I asked her if what her current board would say about her, and, she said, she hasn't told her current board that she's looking, which many candidates don't until they're given an offer, so she would appreciate us not asking at this point, but she said that she had no doubt that they would all speak very favorably about her. She's had extensive experience in industry, which I think is a real positive. Has a master's degree from the University of Michigan in administration. And I think she has very strong credentials, hard worker, like you said, likable, which shouldn't be a negative that you're likable. I just think that, she came and she met us and she answered our questions, and we ranked her number 2, and no one had any negative things to say at that time. And I know there's a difference between number 2 in the interview and being offered the job, and I get that. But I think it's the right thing to do. I think the process needs to be followed. I'm not sure that she will accept our offer. If she does, I'm sure that we would want to bring her here and let her meet people and have an opportunity to talk with everyone before she were to start. But, it's just interesting because, the last administrator who has left the room, I guess he didn't want to be part of this discussion, but, 5 of you here picked that last administrator. And you did it without a blue ribbon panel, and you did it without, more than one interview, and you didn't have to have a psych eval, and he came here with absolutely zero experience as a county administrator, not even in a little 30,000 person county in Mississippi. So it's just surprising to me that you would have such a negative response to her now, and I'm sure it has nothing to do with her gender. I'm sure that has no role at all.
What did you just say?
I said I'm sure it has nothing to do with her gender, that's not,
Oh, no,
that's not
absolutely
coloring your
not.
opinion
No,
at all.
no.
Okay, because
If she were Margaret Thatcher, I'd vote for her.
because if, I can tell you that in my experience, that successful women have to work twice as hard as a successful man and will receive half the credit. So if Vicki Uppel has accomplished what she's accomplished already, and I think she has a very strong resume, she's accomplished it by working very, very hard to get there, and I believe she would work very hard for us. So I'm obviously going to support the motion.
Did you have something? Yes, Brian.
I also think we should start the process over. 3 new candidates, or if Vicki is one of the candidates, I would interview her again. But I think we're going to be setting her up for failure, bringing her in to the county. That's my feeling.
Sonny?
Well, I made the comment the night after the interviews that I felt it was a big jump from where she is to where we are. I went back and I read her resume. I did a little research. Her governmental experience doesn't jump off the page at me, but her industry experience does. For 20 years she was involved in private industry and just about everything from chief financial officers to HR officers to staff management skills. Her private industry experience I think qualifies her for the job. I'm not sure that her couple years in Mississippi in a small community is the same as in Traverse City, but I don't care whether we bring her from Mississippi or if we bring someone from California or New York. The way we do things here is going to be significantly different. There's going to be a learning curve. And I think, like I said, I wasn't all excited about her government experience, and I made that comment. She was solidly the number 2 candidate that we interviewed, at least in my mind, and I believe that was pretty much unanimous amongst all the commissioners that night. Our first choice, I haven't personally talked to him, but I did talk to people in Oak Park prior to having him come here for the interview. They liked him a lot. They had nothing but good things to say. So my guess is when he went to them and said, I've been offered a position in Grand Traverse County, the comment was, okay, what does it take to make you stay here? And most of us inherently do not want to uproot our families and move somewhere else if we can get the same thing here. And my guess is that's why he's staying in Oak Park. We were told he was gainfully employed and the people liked him there. So, the idea that he turned down our offer, that truly doesn't surprise me at all, But Vicki solidly was our second candidate, and I believe the process worked. I really do. Moving
Tom,
forward.
did you have a comment, I think?
Yeah, well, going back to when we had the interviews, I'm glad to see Cheryl is interested in Vicki, because Cheryl, I think, had picked her first, actually. She was your first choice, I think, so.
Well, I made
Yeah.
a motion for
Very
Eric
close.
1 and Vicki 2,
Yeah.
but I said it was based on her timing, was my reason that she was number 2.
So she was a very close second, and I feel the same way. I thought Eric was the best candidate, and I was glad that we all agreed, because we had a 7-0 vote on that, and that felt pretty good all the way around. He obviously made his mind up afterwards that he had changed his mind, and I think Vicki is a great candidate. I mean, how much experience somebody has as a county commissioner hasn't always been the case, and the administrators that we've, the experience that somebody's had as a county administrator hasn't always been the test to become county administrator, because the current county administrator wasn't a county administrator before. So, how many years she's been a county administrator falls a little flat based on that. But she is a county administrator. And one of the things that's different is that they don't have union employees. And I did consider that. That would be one of my reservations. But I'm hoping now that we have a new HR director who's present, that he gets involved in the bargaining negotiations, and it doesn't fall on an attorney or the county administrator so much, because I know that Mr. Hendry does have experience with unions from when he was at NMC, and that's a good thing. So one of my negative things about her can be balanced out easily with Mr. Hendry's participation on the bargaining. I think she fits. I think she's a nice person. She's got the Michigan roots, and as I remember, she wanted to be closer to her grandchildren, which is a nice thing too. I don't think she's just a nice person. I think she's a good candidate, and I'm kind of taken by negative comments that cross the line. I think about whether she's going to get behind right away, or I don't think there's any way to tell those types of things. I don't think there's any way to really tell whether you've picked the best candidate until you can get them started. There's no perfect method. And I called James today, and I gave him some of my questions and concerns, and he alleviated any fear whatsoever that I have in voting for Vicki. I think she is the best choice.
Bob?
Yeah, just to address why there was no discussion about it at the last meeting, was because there was no need for it. We had decided that we were going to offer the position to Eric, so there was no need to get into what I thought were some shortcomings in that. Of the three, that was the ranking, was Eric, her, and then the other gentleman. If we'd have got into it at that point, I wouldn't have supported her. I still think her area, she's just weak. As far as coming in from private industry, you know, you come into private industry into this type of setting, and you're in for a rude awakening because of the way that the employees can kind of rule what's going on. You know, in private industry, you don't have people that are able to go to your CEO and try to undermine everything, so, which you do have here in county government, and you have that everywhere in county government, so she may, you know, see that now. But I guess I want to make sure that, you know, maybe I did come off as strong, but I just do not think that she is the best candidate at this point to take this position, so.
So I have a few comments. I don't see Eric not taking the job as a failure of the process. I just see that as, he just didn't take the job. I don't feel at all like the process that we've gone through here was a failure, simply because the gentleman didn't take the job. He went back, I'm sure it is, as we sort of can surmise by now, he went back, discovered he was very well liked, and said, you know what, nah, I'm not gonna go. I'm certainly not looking for a puppet. I don't want to run the county. Believe me, I do not. I do want someone at the helm who can give good guidance. She seems like she has a very good head on her shoulders. She has a lot of common sense coming through. And that's what I'm looking for, is someone that will give the information and the good guidance that will lead to good decisions by us. I certainly don't want to pull the strings. I do not want a puppet at all. I think one of her strengths is that she has worn many hats. She does fulfill a lot of different positions in her county government right now. And so she has experience in a lot of areas of county government that actually not all administrators would have. And I do think that she is a good mix of some government and private. And that is what we stated we were looking for at the beginning. We actually kind of went away from that with Eric because he was mostly government experience. And here we have, I think, a good mix of government and private. I really believe that Vicki can handle this. I have spoken to her. I spoke to her last Friday. I wanted to ensure she's still interested. She assured me she watched everything that happened all last week. I did explain that this is the kind of environment that we're in right now. It's a tough environment. We all know that. We all experience that every single day. And so she is up for the challenge. I think that she will be effective. I think she will be quietly effective. I think it will cut down on the drama a little bit, having someone who is quieter, who is nicer, who is able to deal with things, like I said, in a common sense manner. I just get that feeling from her. And I would be very, very happy with her as our county administrator. So with that, roll call vote, please. Bonnie?
Johnson?
No.
Gore Follett?
Yes.
Klaus?
No.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Lathrop?
No.
Crawford?
Yes.
Passed.
Thank you. Now we come to second public comment. Anybody out there have any comments to make? Words of wisdom, criticism, anything, bring it on. None. Okay. Any commissioner department reports? Yes, Cheryl.
I would just like to say, before she leaves, on behalf of the EDC...
She was going to run.
What an incredible, incredible job Gene Dorenzi has done with the CAR conference. If you haven't had a chance to get out there and participate in any of it, phenomenal. I mean...
Thank you, Gene.
Phenomenal.
Yes, I agree. Our EDC has done an excellent job. Excellent job presenting our county. I didn't realize until I read about it, all the different things that you and our administration has been involved in letting people know that we have space here.
I went out and Sonny and I think maybe Tom was there as well. I didn't see
Yeah.
him, but Sonny and I were there at the same time for the event that the Haggertys sponsored last night. And, I mean, I met people, I was sprechen Sie Deutsch with some guys from Germany, and, you know, I mean, there are people there from all over the world, and they're checking out Traverse City, and that is just very, very cool. And Jean threw this thing, didn't throw it together, she hauled it by tooth and nail. And this is just another example, people, of work that people at the county do, where they don't get extra compensation for it, and they work their tails off to do a great job for us. And this is just one example of that. And I'm sure the audit would be another, and I mean, there's a lot of people working really hard for Grand Traverse County, and they're not making anything extra for it. So, thank you, Jean.
Yeah.
You did us good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good things going on, and I wish people knew more about the good things that are happening instead of the controversies and
Yeah, I already
things like
told
that.
Jean and Dr. Lathrop, but the rest of you, I got to ride in the driverless vehicle today.
Ooh,
Yeah, I was
very
on
cool.
US 31 going north for about...
With no driver? Oh, my gosh.
Nobody was running the car except for the system, so...
Oh, that scares me.
In your live. Next, I'll put you out with my 15-year-old to drive with him.
Yeah, we were doing 55, 60 miles an hour in traffic, and
Oh, my gosh.
Were you drinking?
Why not?
they did tell me to put my seatbelt on, which I had forgotten to put on, so I thought, oh, that's probably a good idea, so...
Anybody else?
The one
Sonny?
thing I'd like to add about the Haggerty event last night, the interesting thing when you attend these kind of events, which they're kind of designed to be social, is to see whether or not people actually, you know, a lot of people come to see what's going on, but whether or not they actually stay. 2 hours into this event, these various groups of people are milling around and having conversations with each other. And that's the key thing of whether or not those type of events work. You know, you know, there's always, when you have one of these events, there's the people that come in and they go to the bar and they go to the hors d'oeuvres and then they're out the door, you know. But I saw none of that last night, which was really, really interesting. You know, I spent, you know, not quite 2 hours there, but, you know, I'm sure that there were people there. Yeah, I know that the room was still full when I left, and so I'm sure there's people that were there 2.5, 3 hours, hands down, and in a so-called social event that was scheduled at the Haggerty Garage from 7 to 9 last night. So, again, congratulations to Jean and everyone that had anything to do with our getting involved in this process. You know, it's an opportunity that we've probably missed. The CARS organization has been here now for nearly 20 years. We've never participated until last year.
52.
52 years?
52.
Okay, 52 years. They are being recruited very, very heavily to relocate their event to Grand Rapids. And I'm hoping that we can figure out some way to help encourage them to continue to come back to Traverse City.
Anybody else? Good things? Anybody? Okay, we have no notices. Well, I will give one notice. August 19th, Saturday, is your Community Day at the Civic Center. It's the kickoff for fundraising for the Eastling Pool. I see your eyebrows going up, Bob. I expect to see you there. And the dedication of the new playground. So lots of good things going on at the Civic Center on August 19th. Yes.
That reminds me, I will not be here at our meeting, I think it's the 16th.
Unacceptable.
So I
Why?
will be
Fair.
for work down in Cleveland, so.
Aw, okay.
This is in Cleveland.
I will not either be here.
You will not either be here on the 16th.
Chris Kramer knows that.
Okay, so 2 excused absences. Okay, then. All right, we are adjourned. Wonderful. Thank you.
No, it wasn't.